We're all waiting for something. Likkutei Sichot, part 2, volume 2, Parshas Balak. בקשר לפסוק קרא שכב כארי וחלבי מי יקימנו. So regarding the verse that Bilam says, it's one of his parables, and he describes the Jewish people as a lion that is lying down, and as a female. Well, it's not a female. Lion in Hebrew has seven names, and the two most famous are Aryeh and Lavi. And then there's 5 more. So in the first part of the verse, he's called the Ari. He's called the lion. Then he's called the Lavi. It just means lion again. And like a lion, who can make him rise up? Who can make him stand up? It says in the Medrash, in Bereishis Rabbah, that this is talking about specific, meaning that they had a tradition about what this was talking about. Ne'emar b'midrash, again, what's the context? The context is that Balak took this soothsayer. His name was Bilam. And the way that everybody prophesied back then was that they prophesied in parables. Moshe Rabbeinu was always strange. He was always not like the regular prophet because he didn't speak in parables. But all the prophets everywhere, and even by us, except for we know that there's 3 books in the Torah that weren't written like prophecy, right? In the Tanakh, there's 3 books, 4 books if you really. Yoshua, and that wasn't written in prophecy. Yoshua, Shoftim, Samuel, and Kings, so they were written like a history book, but they include some parables. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't write at all in parables. He wrote directly what he meant. But everybody else around the world, they prophesied in parables. So in the Medrash it says, so you have to understand what the parable is talking about. So the Medrash says, Ki musav latkufa sheben melech Tzidkiyahu ad lemelech Mashiach. So this is talking about the time from basically the last king of Judah, the destruction of the temple. There's a last king who was still, to some extent, a little bit independent, until the time of the Mashiach. Sheken bizman Tzidkiyahu uchel lechuban v'agalut, because in the time of Tzidkiyahu, the destruction began, the exile began. ואפילו לאחר 70 השנה, בזמן הבית שני, היה עדיין עניין הגלות. משום ש5 דברים חסרו בבית שני, כך שלא הייתה זו גאולה שלמה. And even what we call the Second Temple period, this is not to be considered an end of the exile, because it was within the exile. Even though they built the temple again, and during the Chasmonian period they had a short 100 years that they were independent even. But in the end, this was exile. Is that the temple is not complete, even though they built it. They were missing 5 different ingredients that they showed that the Shekhinah, that the divine presence is in the temple. And these 5 different ingredients, they never came back in the second temple. So since this is entirely the time, so what the Medrash is saying is this is the time of the exile, from Tzidkiyahu to the Mashiach. About this time period, this long exile, what the Medrash is saying is that there the Jewish people are described as kara shachav. They've lied down, and they've kneeled down and lie down. That's the direct translation. לפי אותם יש אומרים שמפרשים את המושג שכב. כך כתב הצמח צדק מלשון וישכב וירדם על משכבי בלילות ולא ימות ונפל למשכב. מושג המבטא את עניין הגלות. So the kneeling down and then lying down, the Tzemach Tzedek writes in his Maimarim that the lying down here is like a person going to sleep, and that is what captures the essence of what it means to be in exile. It's like a person who is asleep. ברם, עלול מישהו לחשוב שהגלות היא לא רק לגבי הגוף, אם גם לגבי הנשמה. חס וחלילה, וענייני תורה ומצוות שהם קשורים בנשמה. So, you might think that this is a parable that is saying that not only are we physically lying down, but we're also spiritually lying down. And that the exile has affected not just the body, but also the spirit. And so, what would it mean that it affected the spirit? That maybe the mitzvos are not relevant. There were people who explained something like that. Yeah. נאמר איפה, באותו פסוק, שגם במצב של קרא שכב אינו מצב של שכיבת העינונים, כי מצב של הגבלה עצמית, כשמי שמגביל ומצמצם ממדי עצמו. So he says here, but the parable in the verse is that it's not that he's fallen down and he's lying helpless. It's rather he's kneeled down and then lied down. It's from his own volition. He's knelt down and is, right, what did I say, kneel down? He's from Neil Diamond, like Neil Diamond, something. Yeah. So he's knelt down and he's lying down. It's of his own volition. He wants that. So what is he doing? He's limiting himself, this person in the parable. So the Jewish people are in a state of limiting themselves. It's voluntary. It's not something that they're not lying down helpless. Because in the end, the image in the parable is of a lion who's knelt down and is now lying down. You wouldn't say about a lion that he's helpless. You say that that's what he wants to do right now. He has a lot of strength. Now he says there's an interesting difference between Ari and Levi. That the lion, the name lion, and the name Levi. Levi is closer to lion, of course. Okay. Leviah. Right. That one is the one that takes on the feminine form. So because of that, we usually think that Levi is actually a younger lion. There's the Aryeh and there's the Levi. But he says here that actually the Levi, according to the Zohar, is stronger than the lion. Meaning, the simplest explanation of these 7 names is because there are 7 stages in the lion's development. Okay. So the lion is the older one, and the Levi is the younger one. So he has more strength actually. I think that's the explanation. As it says in the Zohar about the Levi, that he's betakifa yatir, that he has more boldness, he has more strength than the Aryeh, than that name. Kolomar, meaning, what does this all mean? The intent here is that afilu bizman shel kara shachav en purush hadavar chas v'chalila sheyadu umot ha'olam shalita al Yisrael. What this means is that even when we're kneeling down and lying down, you should not think that the hand of the nations of the world is over us, that they're stronger than we are, that they can control us. Rather, Bnei Israelites, Jewish people, are always like a lion, like a Levi. The only question is who's going to raise us up? Who's going to get us to stand up? דוגמת עניין, מי גילה לבניי רע הקשור במי ייתן והיה לבבם זה להם ליראה אותי, המוסב על הקדוש ברוך הוא. Meaning, who will raise us up? God will. Like in the other verses, who revealed this secret to my children? That when we said Naseh v'nishma, we will hear and we will do. So who revealed it? Hashem did. Because he doesn't want to tell the angels that I revealed it to them. Okay? But he says that they know it from me. The same thing it says, who will grant them this same heart from now on? Meaning that when they were standing at Mount Sinai, and they asked Moshe Rabbeinu to speak instead of Hashem. So Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu said, maybe it's not a good thing. Why don't they want to hear Hashem directly? So Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it's good what they're asking. Who will grant them the same heart that they have today from now on? And the answer is, me here is, Hashem will. Here too, the explanation is that who will raise them? God will raise them. Hu yotzienu min hagalut. K'vi shenemar, mi yiten mitzion yeshuat Yisrael. Because it's Hashem who's going to make us rise up. Nothing else. And as it says, who will bring from Zion the salvation of Israel. So who's who? Who's who? The whole book, Who's Who, is about Hashem, basically. That's the idea. And until that time, until that time that God raises us up, so even though it may seem like the nations of the world are in power, they're in power over the Jewish people, it only seems that way. Because really they have no power whatsoever over the Jewish people. As it says in Psak Halacha, that's what the Halacha says in Shulchan Aruch, when we're talking about what kind of damage these animals do, these wild animals, the lion, so the psak is that no human being can control them. So much so that there's a question about whether they can be domesticated through habit, whether you can actually bring them to. And the answer is that some of the time, yes, but not all of the time. And so a lot of lion trainers have been eaten. They do a good job for a while, but they never know when it comes. And suddenly, out of nowhere, these cats decide to attack the trainer. And a lot of them finished with an early retirement. Okay. Really, exile does not have any logic. There's no logic to exile. It doesn't make any sense. And really, it's only because it was decreed from above. In other words, exile, he's saying, is not a natural course of events in the world. It's not a normal state of affairs, especially not for 2,500 years, according to this cheshbon. The reckoning here is that it started with Tzidkiyahu. So if it started with Tzidkiyahu, we're 2,500 years into it already. It's not just 2,000 years. Right? People like to say 2,000 years, but the truth is it's 2,500 years. It's enough. And it also doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing. We've never seen anyone else in the world go through something like this, but also what he means here is that they have no control. So don't think that it was a series of political events that led up to this. What he wants to say, what he wants to impress on us, is that exile is a decree from above. And you can't finish the exile until the decree is lifted. And so it doesn't help that you might want to finish the exile. The same thing is true today. Has the decree been lifted or not? So you see that no matter what the Jewish people do, you can't get the entire Jewish people into the land of Israel. Theoretically, if they're theoretically, if the thinking was right? If the thinking was right, that we are in control whether we're in exile or not. So we decided to come back. So why are there only 6 million Jews here? Where are the other 9? Why are they not here? It doesn't make any sense. And if you would tell me the other 9 are not here and they've disappeared, they're gone, they don't exist, because anybody who didn't come here can't survive. It's not true. There's still 9 million Jews everywhere. And not only that, you could easily say that the American exile is just as big as the Israeli exile. The same thing, the same size almost. Is the situation here for Jews better than it is there? In some respects it is, in some respects it's not. Is there more Torah here than there is there? So a lot of people say yes, that there is now more Torah here. But it's a quantitative thing. Is it really a qualitative thing? Is the quality-wise really different? So now it seems in the last 10 years that maybe it's shifting in the direction that in Israel there's more high quality Torah than there is in other places. It seems that way. Because really it's very hard to name someone who's serious outside of Israel today. Very hard. I don't know, you'd be hard pressed. Do you know of anyone who... Yeah. Apart from your sons. So, if you can't answer, then we're in trouble. Because most people can't answer. The reason most people can't answer is because the only type of Torah they think of is the Nigla, is the revealed. But when you ask about, what about knowing the whole Torah? Not just the Nigla, just knowing Chassidus even. So certainly the people who know more Chassidus are still in America. That's just what we talked about. The people that wrote Likkutei Sichos know more of the in-depth of the concealed tradition than people that are here. The only exception is Rav Ginsburg. Okay. He's the only one that you could say he has all of the Torah in front of him. Not the revealed necessarily, that he knows like any Talmud Chacham, but the concealed tradition is. It's not clear at all that this ended the exile. It doesn't seem that it. And no matter what you do, for some reason, 9 million Jews still stay outside. They don't come. So you got this question: are we really able to end the exile or not? So, like you said, the understanding is that no. מובן איפה מאליו, כי לגבי תורה ומצוות שמקורם וידבר אלוקים את כל הדברים האלה, אין כל קשר לגלות בכלל. But the most important thing to take away from this is that Torah and mitzvahs were not affected at all by the exile. It had no effect on Torah and mitzvahs. This is all the same. Okay, should we continue a little bit more? You davened already, huh? So I'll go daven in a second. Do you have 5 more minutes so we can finish this first Sicha? Section 2. ברם, מפני ההתרגלות לגלות משום אותותינו לא ראינו, because we become accustomed to being in exile, and we don't see what we call signs from above. ניסים מתקיימים גם עתה, אלא שלא ראינו, אין בעל הנס מכיר בניסו. There are miracles still, right now, at this moment. The problem is that we don't see them. We become accustomed to not seeing, we become accustomed to seeing nature. ובגלל חושך הגלות עלולה לשרור טעות שעולם כמנהגו נוהג. Because the darkness of exile, people might come to the conclusion that we're now in a time where the world is just normal. There's no divine intervention. עולם מלשון העלם והסתר, and the world conceals God. וכאילו העולם שולט על הארי ועל אבי. And in the end, the way we need to act is by taking into consideration how the world is. And that's what's controlling this lion, meaning the Jewish people. Meaning that they're also under the auspices of nature now. It says that's a mistake. For that reason, revealed miracles are shown from time to time, even during the time of exile. And one of those miracles was the miracle of the 12th and 13th of Tammuz. That remind us that even in time of the exile, there is nothing but God who's running the world. What was a great miracle then? What was their problem to kill him? They could have taken the Friediger Rebbe in 3 seconds. They could have killed him and thrown him out. They wouldn't even have to report about the body. Nothing. And yet, he took the wrong turn somewhere. And they told him, take a right, and he took the second right, or the first right instead of the second right, whatever it was. And later he learned that where they had sent him was where they were executing. And he didn't know this. There was no way he could have known. So he took the wrong train. He ended up in a different room. And so there they interrogated. It was like people who were for interrogation or something like that. Why didn't the guard go with him? It's also a question. There's many revealed miracles that happened, and in the end he was saved. Completely, without any punishment, nothing. But he was exiled from the Soviet Union. Okay. But the whole situation was such that it's a revealed miracle. This is the meaning of the sage's statement. In the beginning, God He thought of creating the world with judgment. But he saw that it could not be sustained, so he included the measure of compassion. The Tanya says, what does it mean that he added the measure of compassion? That through the tzaddikim, through the righteous of the generation, you see the revelation of godliness and even miracles through them. The purpose of these miracles is only one thing. It's not to impress you, wow, this tzaddik is so holy. The purpose is to show you that God is still in control. Don't believe what your eyes see. And from time to time, you have to see that what your eyes are seeing is just not right. עם זכירת דבר זה באה הידיעה שבני ישראל הינם תמיד כארי וחלבי, בתורה ומצוות אינם נתונים בגלות. And so, by remembering this from time to time, you come to the consciousness that the Jewish people are still a lion, and they've, from God's command, they're sleeping now, or they're lying down now, and He's the only one who's in control. God is the only one who's in control over this sleeping, over this exile. And really, and that is only with respect to the parable. And when it comes to the Torah and mitzvot, which are the spiritual dimension, there is no exile. Okay, we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. Yes, we'll actually be able to finish it, I think, next week, because there's only 2 more sichos, and they're actually short. Okay.